Start with why, not the wound. When betrayal hits, the first instinct is to stare at the wound, to replay the moment you discovered the truth, to cycle through questions that burn with anger. But the wound, no matter how deep, is not where strength begins. Strength begins when you shift your gaze from the surface cut to the deeper meaning beneath it. Why does this hurt so much? What does it awaken in you? What part of your soul is shaking because of it? Asking why is not about excusing the act, it is about reclaiming your clarity in the face of chaos. When a husband cheats, it is easy to believe the betrayal is about you, that you are somehow less, that you failed to hold attention or loyalty. But the why is not about self-blame. The why is about discovering what you value most, what boundaries matter to you, and what truth you cannot live without. Anger is powerful but temporary. Purpose is steady and long-lasting. To start with why means to pause before reacting, to understand that your next step is not just about punishing the wrong, but about protecting your own dignity. The wound cries for vengeance, but vengeance keeps you stuck in the same cycle of hurt. The why opens a doorway to wisdom. Betrayal awakens questions about trust, about love, about what you are willing to fight for and what you must release. It reminds you that you have needs that deserve to be honored. It challenges you to look inward, not just outward, to see how you define worth and how you expect to be treated. Without that clarity, every decision becomes a reaction to pain instead of a creation of strength. Think of a compass. When you lose direction in a storm, you do not stare at the rain. You look for the needle that points you back to center. Your why is that compass. It is the reminder that your identity is bigger than this betrayal, that your worth is not up for negotiation, that your values must remain intact even when someone else breaks their promise. If you act from anger, you may say things you cannot take back or make choices you later regret. But if you act from clarity, you set a foundation that no storm can shake. The why also helps you separate the person from the pain. You may never fully understand his choices, but you can understand your response. Do you want to rebuild trust, or do you want to walk away? Do you want to open a door for dialogue, or do you want to stand firm on new boundaries? The wound will scream at you to act immediately, but the why will whisper that timing matters, that the right decision made with calm power outweighs any fast reaction made in rage. There is a profound shift that happens when you focus on why. Instead of saying, I was betrayed and I am broken, you begin to say, I was betrayed and now I know what I will no longer accept. Instead of, I am not enough, you begin to say, I know what enough means to me and I will never settle for less. This is not about denial of pain. The pain is real. But when you elevate above the wound, you see the lesson it points to rather than the scar it threatens to leave. So start with why, not the wound. Ask what matters most to you. Ask what this betrayal is teaching you about your own strength, your own needs, your own purpose. Then act from that place. Because when your steps are aligned with purpose, you cannot be diminished. Betrayal may bruise you, but it cannot erase the clarity of someone who chooses why over anger, meaning over reaction, dignity over destruction. Pain is proof of caring. The hurt you feel when betrayal strikes is not a reflection of weakness. It is evidence that you poured yourself into something that mattered. Only people who have given their heart fully can feel the sharpness of betrayal. If you had been indifferent, if you had never invested, there would be no pain to carry. The very weight of your hurt shows that you cared deeply, that you were willing to risk vulnerability, that you were brave enough to love. Too often, in the middle of heartbreak, people confuse their tears with fragility. They think crying means they are broken, that suffering makes them smaller. But the truth is the opposite. Pain is a marker of depth. To hurt means you dared to build, you dared to believe, you dared to stand in the light of intimacy knowing it could cast shadows. Anyone can live closed off untouched, guarded against risk. But the one who chooses to love chooses to expose themselves to the possibility of pain. That choice is not weakness, it is courage. When you sit with the ache in your chest, remind yourself that this ache is proportional to the love you once carried. It does not mean your love was wasted. It means you are capable of reaching a level of care that many people never allow themselves to feel. This should not be a source of shame, but a reminder of your strength. People who feel deeply are the ones who create real connection. They are the ones who build families, who nurture trust, who leave legacies of meaning. Pain does not diminish that legacy, it confirms it. The danger comes when you misinterpret your pain as proof that you are broken. Betrayal does not prove your inadequacy, it proves your humanity. It shows that you can invest, that you can dedicate, that you can give without holding back. That capacity is a gift, even if in this moment it feels like a burden. Without the ability to care, life becomes shallow and empty. With the ability to care, even suffering becomes meaningful, because it reveals the depth of who you are. Hurt also teaches resilience. The fact that you feel this much pain means you stretched your heart beyond comfort. Just as muscles tear and grow stronger through exertion, the heart too can expand through trials. Your pain is a signal of growth waiting to happen. It says, hey, you loved, you lost, and yet you are still here. That survival alone is proof of your strength. And what survives is always stronger than what came before. It is important to remember that pain is not permanent, even though it feels endless in the moment. It will soften, it will evolve, and in time it will transform into wisdom. But for now, let it remind you that you are not numb. You are alive. Numbness is the absence of caring. Pain is the presence of it. And presence is always better than emptiness. The person who can feel pain is the same person who can feel joy, who can love again, who can rebuild. So do not apologize for hurting. Do not hide your tears as if they are weakness. Let them be the evidence that you lived with your heart open. Hurt means you invested, and investment is never wasted when it reveals your capacity for love. You may feel shattered now, but the very fact that you hurt proves that you once built something worth risking. That is strength. That is proof of caring. And that is the kind of proof that can never be taken away from you. Don't react, respond. In the moments after betrayal, anger rises like fire. It demands release, it pushes you toward impulsive words and reckless actions. Reaction feels natural because it is fueled by the raw shock of hurt. But reaction, though powerful in the moment, often leaves scars that outlast the wound itself. The path to strength is not in unleashing the first wave of anger, but in transforming that energy into a deliberate response. Response is not silence born of fear, it is action born of clarity. It is the difference between being controlled by pain and using pain as a guide toward dignity. When you react, you surrender power to the very person who broke your trust. Your emotions become strings for someone else to pull. You may scream, throw accusations, or lash out only to regret what you said once the fire cools. Reaction often creates more chaos than the betrayal itself because it adds layers of damage. Harsh words burn bridges, rash decisions. But when you respond, you reclaim authority over yourself. A response is measured, thoughtful, and intentional. It communicates not just how you feel, but who you choose to be in the face of adversity. Response begins with pause. That pause is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the recognition that your worth does not need to prove itself through shouting. It is the courage to breathe through the heat and give space for your thoughts to settle. In that pause, you gain perspective. You begin to ask, what outcome do I want? What choice aligns with my values? What action preserves my dignity? Those questions shift you from chaos to clarity, from being consumed by the moment to shaping the direction of what comes next. The difference between reaction and response is the difference between fire and light. Fire burns without control, destroying everything in its path. Light is controlled fire, directed and intentional, illuminating what matters most. Reaction may feel satisfying in the short term, but it rarely builds anything of value. Response, though harder to summon, creates outcomes that align with your long-term strength and peace. Responding does not mean suppressing your feelings. It means channeling them wisely. Anger can be a tool when expressed with clarity rather than fury. You can state boundaries without screaming. You can reveal hurt without begging. You can demand respect without losing composure. In fact, the calm expression of truth often shakes others more than rage ever could. Calmness reveals control, and control commands respect. Consider the image of a storm. Reaction is like lightning, loud, sudden, and destructive. Response is like the river that flows steadily after the rain, carving its path with quiet persistence. One is spectacle, the other is transformation. The storm passes quickly, but the river shapes the landscape forever. Your choice to respond rather than react allows your dignity to shape the future instead of letting chaos dictate it. This principle is not only about betrayal, but about life itself. In every situation where emotions rise, the one who reacts loses control, while the one who responds writes the narrative. It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and becoming the author of your own story. The betrayal may not be your choice, but the response always is. That choice defines whether you remain stuck in the wound or rise with wisdom. So don't react, respond. Let your strength reveal itself not through noise but through clarity. Let your dignity stand taller than your anger. Let your actions reflect purpose rather than pain. In doing so, you transform hurt into wisdom and betrayal into a moment that proves your unshakable power to choose who you will be, no matter what was done to you. Rebuild boundaries, not walls. When betrayal shakes the foundation of trust, the first instinct is often to build a fortress around your heart. Walls feel safe because they keep hurt away, they block out vulnerability, and they promise protection from the pain that already feels unbearable. But walls also keep out connection, growth, and the possibility of healing. A life behind walls is not safety, it is isolation. What you need is not walls but boundaries, clear lines that protect your worth without locking you away from what you still deserve. Boundaries are not about punishment, they are about self-respect. They say, this is what I allow, this is what I reject, and this is how I expect to be treated. A wall pushes everyone out indiscriminately, even those who may bring support, love, or renewal. A boundary, on the other hand, filters. It allows in what aligns with your values and keeps out what violates your dignity. This is how you reclaim power after betrayal, not by retreating from the world, but by standing firm in what you will no longer compromise. Rebuilding boundaries begins with knowing your worth. Betrayal often tempts you to question yourself, to think that the hurt happened because you were not enough. But boundaries are built on the truth that you are already enough, and because of that, you have the right to decide what behaviors you accept. When you are clear on your worth, you do not tolerate disrespect disguised as love, nor do you bend yourself into silence to maintain peace. Boundaries remind you that protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. Walls are rigid and heavy, built from fear. Boundaries are flexible and strong, built from clarity. A wall says, I will never trust again. A boundary says, I will trust, but only where trust is earned and honored. A wall says, I cannot be hurt again because I will let no one close. A boundary says, I am open to closeness, but only when it aligns with honesty and respect. The difference is subtle but life-changing. One cuts you off from growth, the other guides you toward healthier connection. When you establish boundaries, you give both yourself and others a chance to grow. You allow space for difficult conversations, for accountability, for rebuilding trust if that is the path you choose. At the same time, boundaries empower you to walk away if those standards are ignored. They make it clear that forgiveness is not weakness, but neither is departure failure. With boundaries, your choices are not dictated by fear, but by alignment with your values. Healing is possible only where boundaries exist. Without them, you risk repeating cycles of hurt, accepting apologies without change, or drowning in resentment while pretending everything is fine. Boundaries create structure for healing, like a frame that holds the shape of a house. They let you rebuild trust brick by brick, ensuring that this time the foundation rests on honesty rather than illusion. It is tempting to believe that walls will make you untouchable, but in truth, they make you unreachable. They block not only pain, but also joy, intimacy, and the chance for renewal. Boundaries, however, allow you to live open yet guarded, hopeful yet discerning, vulnerable yet wise. They transform betrayal from a dead end into a turning point. Rebuilding boundaries is not about protecting yourself from love. It is about creating conditions where love can thrive without fear. It is about knowing that your worth is non-negotiable and that respect is the minimum standard for any relationship. So choose boundaries over walls, choose clarity over fear, choose growth over isolation. Because your self-worth deserves protection, but it also deserves the chance to heal, to expand, and to invite in the love that honors it fully. Clarity precedes decision. When betrayal strikes, the heart races ahead of the mind. You want answers, you want resolution, you want to decide immediately whether to stay or to walk away. But decisions made in the heat of raw emotion rarely serve you well. They come from a place of chaos rather than wisdom. That is why clarity must come before choice. Before you take a single step, you must first stabilize your emotions, calm the storm inside, and see the situation through eyes unclouded by anger or despair. Only then can you determine if the relationship deserves rebuilding or releasing. Emotions are powerful but unstable. Anger burns hot and convinces you to slam doors. Sadness makes you want to retreat and shut down. Fear whispers that leaving will ruin you, while shame tells you that staying makes you weak. Each of these feelings demands action, but none of them are steady ground for a lasting decision. To act while your heart is bleeding is to risk building your future on shaky foundations. The first task is not to choose, but to breathe, to allow the intensity to soften, and to give yourself space to simply feel without finalizing. Stabilizing emotions does not mean ignoring them. It means giving yourself permission to process them fully before they dictate your path. Cry if you need to cry. Scream into the silence if you must. Write down your thoughts until the page is soaked with truth. These releases are not decisions. They are part of the healing that clears your vision. Clarity is born when the fog of immediate pain begins to lift, when the fire cools into embers, and when you can distinguish between what your emotions demand in the moment and what your values require in the long run. Once clarity begins to emerge, you can ask the deeper questions. Is this relationship capable of healing, or has the betrayal severed something that cannot be repaired? Is your partner willing to take accountability, to rebuild trust step by step, to show through action that loyalty can return? Or are you carrying the weight alone, hoping for change that will never come? These questions cannot be answered while you are still drowning in rage or sorrow. They require the calm that comes only after emotional grounding. Clarity is not about choosing quickly. It is about choosing wisely. Sometimes clarity reveals that the relationship, though wounded, still holds potential for growth, and with boundaries, communication, and accountability, it can be rebuilt stronger. Other times, clarity shows that releasing is the only path to dignity, that staying would be a slow erosion of self-worth. Neither choice is easy, but the right one becomes visible only when you stand on the firm ground of clarity rather than the shaky surface of reaction. The strength of clarity lies in alignment. It ensures that your decision aligns with your values, not just your feelings. Feelings fluctuate, values endure. Feelings may urge you to forgive too quickly or to leave too abruptly. Values remind you of what you deserve, what respect looks like, and what kind of life you want to build moving forward. Clarity bridges the gap between emotion and value, making sure that your choice honors both your heart and your dignity. Without clarity, decisions feel like escape routes, ways to run from pain. With clarity, decisions feel like pathways, directions toward growth, healing, or freedom. The difference is monumental. One keeps you trapped in cycles of regret, the other sets you on a course that reflects your strength and worth. So give yourself time. Allow the storm to pass, let your emotions settle, and then choose from a place of calm power. Because the decision you make about betrayal will shape not only your relationship, but also your identity. And that identity deserves the wisdom that only clarity can provide, purpose beyond betrayal. When infidelity cuts through the fabric of trust, it is easy to believe that your entire identity has been reduced to that moment. The betrayal feels like it defines you, like your story has been rewritten by someone else's choice. But who you are is bigger than what has been done to you. Betrayal is an event, not a destiny. It is a wound, not a definition. The challenge is to rise above the pain and discover that within the ashes of loss lies an opportunity to redefine what you truly deserve. Your identity does not begin or end with betrayal. Before this moment, you were already someone with values, dreams, strengths, and worth. After this moment, those qualities still remain. Betrayal may shake your confidence, but it cannot erase your essence unless you hand it that power. This is why purpose becomes essential. Purpose reminds you that your life is not just about surviving hurt, but about growing through it. It shifts the question from why did this happen to me? What can I build because of this? That shift is where transformation begins. Purpose is the anchor that steadies you when everything else feels unstable. Without it, you risk letting betrayal consume you, turning your days into cycles of anger, comparison, or despair. With it, you take the raw energy of your pain and redirect it into creating a future that aligns with your worth. Purpose turns suffering into fuel and fuel into forward movement. It reminds you that your story is still unfolding, and this chapter, however painful, does not hold the final word. To find purpose beyond betrayal is to ask yourself what you now know you deserve. Betrayal clarifies standards in a way few other experiences can. It forces you to face what is unacceptable, to see the cost of silence, to confront the limits of patience. That clarity becomes the seed of purpose. Perhaps your purpose is to never again tolerate dishonesty. Perhaps it is to demand deeper intimacy built on transparency. Perhaps it is to walk away and craft a life where loyalty and respect are non-negotiable. Whatever form it takes, betrayal can sharpen your understanding of the love you truly deserve. This is not about minimizing the pain. The hurt is real, but pain without purpose becomes poison. It keeps you stuck, replaying the betrayal endlessly without ever moving forward. Pain with purpose, however, becomes transformation. It teaches, it strengthens, it refines. You do not deny the wound. You use it as a catalyst to grow into someone more self-aware, more resilient, and more grounded in worth. Purpose beyond betrayal also expands your vision of self. You are not just a spouse, not just someone who was hurt. You are an individual with talents, passions, relationships, and dreams that extend far beyond this event. Betrayal may have affected one part of your life, but it does not own your whole life. By leaning into your purpose, you remind yourself that you are more than the role of someone betrayed. You are the author of your own future. When you choose purpose, you reclaim control. You stop being defined by what was done to you and start defining yourself by what you create from it. The betrayal becomes less of a prison and more of a doorway that pushes you towards setting higher standards, building stronger boundaries, and living with greater intention. Purpose beyond betrayal is the declaration that your worth is not negotiable. It is the decision to rise, to grow, to demand better not only from others, but from yourself. It is the recognition that your identity is larger than pain, that your life is bigger than this moment, and that betrayal, no matter how devastating, cannot eclipse the power of someone who chooses to live with purpose.